All right, and I believe we're live. Welcome, everybody. We will be kicking off in, about 3 minutes as folks stream in virtually. We don't really see you, but we're hoping to get there.
Oh, well, feel free.
Well,
we appreciate the enthusiasm.
He's ready to go. That's good. We like that. All right, well, you know what? It's 12 o'clock. Why don't we get started? Let's not, what do they call it? Let's not affect the punctual here. Welcome to the CCIM San Diego chapter's Lunch and Learn series, where we promote excellence, competency, and collaboration. I'm your host, Doug Tabor, board member of CCIM San Diego and rental property broker with KW Commercial here in San Diego County. Of course, my wonderful co-host today is Miss Paris Moe. Paris is a sustainability manager at Verdani Partners, and we are always happy to have Paris on board. How are you today, Paris?
I'm doing great. Always excited to be here, Doug.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. A few housekeeping items. Attendees are all in listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question, please use the question box, which is at the bottom of your screen. And then, of course, like all of our events, this event will be recorded today, and you will receive a link to visit the event later on and watch a replay of it. Those links will all be sent out via email. And our agenda today is pretty standard for us. We are going to do, of course, our introduction, which we're doing now. We're going to recognize our sponsors, which we're grateful for. We're going to take a quick audience poll, find out who's in the audience today. And then we're going to introduce our speaker today, which we are delighted to have. Somewhere around 12:30, we're going to do a Q&A, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions for Alan today. And then we will wrap up most likely promptly at 1 p.m. So a little bit about CCIM and CCIM San Diego chapter. Our chapter of CCIM Institute focuses on events that promote excellence, competency, and collaboration. And if you're not familiar with what CCIM is, it basically is a designation that stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member. And members are encouraged through a series of coursework and it was brutal for me, but a brutal test at the end of all of that coursework to get your PIN, to get the CCIM designation PIN. It's a worldwide chapter that really supports the commercial real estate industry. Like many of the other associate programs that are out there, the associations, our chapter's trying to figure out how to survive in a COVID world. Previously we generated a lot of revenue that carried the chapter from our live events. Obviously, we've gone 12 months without those. So if you notice going forward, some of our events where we have a small registration fee, please note that that's put in place simply so that we can sustain providing this local, very relevant content for folks. So we do appreciate your understanding. And again, we're going to try to keep those registration fees very small, but from time to time, we will need to try to generate some revenue ourselves for the sustenance of the chapter. If you're interested in learning about how you could maybe become a sponsor for CCIM San Diego, or you want to possibly become a designee, which is really, really highly helpful for your career if you're in commercial real estate, visit a number of places. You can go to our website, which is ccimsandiego.com. Check out our LinkedIn page where you can follow us and learn about some of our recent events. And then, of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are trying to put all of this content on all of these different platforms. And again, we're trying to make it very relevant for our community here in San Diego County. And now I just want to take a quick moment to thank our very generous sponsors for 2021. Like I mentioned, we're still trying to remain relevant in this world, especially with COVID, and the sponsors have really been instrumental in keeping us afloat. Our platinum sponsors include Hex Solberg, Marcus and Milchap, Savills Global Real Estate Expert, and PMB Healthcare Real Estate. Thank you to our platinum sponsors. And our gold sponsors are CoStar, Exeter 1031 Exchange Services, SCS Engineers, and our friends over at Slat Capital. We want to thank again everybody for your continued support through 2021. All right, now you know a little bit about us, and we'd like to take a moment to find out a little bit about you. So if you could, please complete the audience poll that pops up on your screen, and let's get a feel for where all of you come from and what part of the industry. We probably have about 100 folks registered today. So let's get a sense of where the majority of those individuals are coming from. This is always the horse race moment. I always kid, right, Paris? We see on our screen the different percentages, and it looks like today the brokers have come out in force. They're leading the way with about 31%, followed very closely by the owner investors, about 28%, 28 to 30%. And that's usually about our mix. We have some developers on, we have some lenders that are here, welcome, property managers, some attorneys, and then we have those others. We never know who those others are, but it's always nice to have everybody. So welcome to everybody, and we appreciate your attendance today, and we're excited to introduce our featured speaker. Our featured speaker today is published author and local economic luminary, Mr. Alan Nevin of Expera Group. Alan is an economist, a demographer, and a futurist. His consulting practice concentrates on providing advice for real estate owners and developers, and he serves as an expert witness in real estate litigation throughout San Diego County and Southern California. Alan holds graduate degrees from Stanford and American universities. He is the co-founder of the UCSD Economics Roundtable, a member of the advisory board of the UCSD Real Estate and Development Program, and an elected fellow of the LAI Land Economics Society and Land Economics Foundation. Alan's book, The Great Divide, which if you haven't read it, you should read this book, analyzes demographic patterns that will shape the world and the US over the next quarter century. And I'm hoping, Alan, that we have a new edition coming out, because I was recently thumbing through my book, and when I read it was, I believe, 2018, and I'm assuming that there's some changes in there specifically around the cost of building apartment buildings, but I'll let you address that later. Presenting the state of the economy, what he is calling As the World Heals, please welcome Mr. Alan Nevin. Alan, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Doug. And my next book awaits the output of the 2020 census, which won't come about till this fall. So it'll probably be spring 22 for another book. And that, I'm working on it. Any event, let's start off on the next slide. And it's all about jobs, and it is. So what we see here is the unemployment rate is edging back towards what it was pre-COVID, and that's a very good sign. And on the next slide, what you will see is the unemployment rate pattern, and this is really sort of fascinating. It took us almost 10 years to get back from where we were at the last recession down to 3.5% right pre-COVID. Then we jump up to 15%. But the great news is that we have dropped very substantially in a very short period of time. And that's really very good news. Let's look at the next slide, because what you see is that since January, we have added 1.8 million jobs at the national base, and that's very positive. and probably augurs well for the next year or two. Now, the problem of this COVID, where the last massive recession was really real estate related, and it killed off Lehman Brothers and several others. This recession is completely different in that virtually half of all the job losses nationally are in leisure and hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and the like. And the rest of the economy has done remarkably well considering the massive shock we've all had. Now, on the next slide, what I want to show you is that this has been a pandemic that has caused great pain for those with lesser educations. When we look at those with a bachelor's degree or higher, 3.8% isn't exactly devastating. So when we look at the next slide, what you see is that it's also been a recession that has been very harsh for particularly Hispanic and Black. And that is just gradually coming back because those two, Hispanic and Black, are very heavy in leisure and hospitality. So this spring, they're starting to heal. On the next slide, I want to talk about cars. Cars are a marvelous thing because people don't buy them unless they feel good about themselves. And for 5 years in a row, prior to COVID, we had been selling 17 million new cars a year. We never had a 5-year period like that in history. Last year, they dropped down 15% and are now really starting to come back. But what's interesting, if you look at the next slide, is that Mercedes and BMW and Lexus really didn't have a bad time of it. They're down. They were down 8.6, 8.9%, but they are steaming along very well now in the high-end market. And on the next slide, what you see, and this is sort of fascinating, the used car business has been going up on a very steady pace. Last year, they did about 41 million cars, and they could have actually sold a lot more, but because the new cars were not coming online from Korea and Japan and Germany as fast as they could, they didn't have enough used cars on the lots. Used car dealers typically have a 2-month supply. That's what they like. And they were down to less than a month's supply, didn't have enough goods. So I'm looking at this year coming up. It's going to be a brilliant year for used car dealers. And that's another indication that people feel good about themselves. They're going to buy. And incidentally, what that also means is a lot of those folks were people who previously were taking public transit to work and have been not using public transit for about a year now. And public transit ridership is down very dramatically. And I don't know when it's coming back. In San Diego, if you look at the buses, I rarely see anybody on them except the driver. So let's look at the next slide. Now, here in San Diego, we follow a national pattern, but one of the things I want to point out is that when we look out the next 25 or 30 years, we see a major increase in the 35 to 59-year-old group. And those are the folks who buy the Mercedes, who buy homes and spend the big bucks. And as that group continues to grow, that augurs very well for our local economy. As a short note, look down to 75-year plus. That group is growing exponentially. And when you think of that going out 25 or 30 years, you are going to see this massive demand for senior-related healthcare and services that will create the demand here in the county. And we're talking about more hospitals, more memory-related facilities, and it's one huge part of the economy that's going to keep on growing very, very dependably. So that's good. Let's look at the next one. So like the nation, we hit a high spot. Now we're going down on the unemployment rate. And on the next page, you can see that we are taking off, and we are very nicely. Let's look on the next page, because that'll tell you what has happened here. Like the nation, we had been suffering dramatically with leisure and hospitality. And that's just starting to come back. The rest of the categories, you can see, really didn't suffer very badly. The government unemployment that you see relates heavily to government-sponsored education. And that too is starting to come back right now. Notice, if you will, professional and business services were virtually untouched in this COVID pandemic. And those are the folks who fill up our office buildings and buy the Mercedes. And really, the reason why we have that enormous amount of extra money coming in at the state level, it's all because of basically the top 10% of income earners that are doing extremely well in this COVID. Let's look at the next slide. We have gained 40,000 jobs, January, February, and March. Unfortunately, April's numbers are not out yet. They'll be out in a couple of weeks. And I anticipate we'll have even further gains as we look into the balance of the year. On the next slide, we can now turn to the subject of real estate, which is really all you care about. So let's first talk about interest rates. On the next slide is a very obvious decline in interest rates. And it's the Bank of England is paying 0.1% on CDs. They're at the lowest rate in their 325-year history. And rates are anticipated to remain low. The Feds want them low. And the result of that, of course, is the continued demand for real estate, because even if you're at a 4 cap, if you're only paying 2% for your money, you're in pretty good shape. And most folks know that by now. Let's go to the next one, because a lot of folks were saying, you know, with the pandemic and people losing their jobs, that there'd be a massive increase in foreclosures in homes. And you can see that far from the truth of a pandemic-led disaster, we see that foreclosures have basically gone away. They're just not there. So now let's look at the building activity. In 2020, we had more construction than in 2019. And remember, we are in the middle in 2020 of a 9 months of 2020. We're in a massive recession-oriented economy, and yet the construction kept on moving. And it is, I can also tell, by the way, from the figures on the first 3 months of this year, that we're off to a very, very good start in San Diego. And the real estate, to a large degree, drives an economy. It had the multiplier effect on construction is like a 2 to 1. It's one of the highest of any industry. So we're looking forward to a really good year in construction, both residential and commercial. Let's look at the next slide. Now, San Diego Association of Realtors, which probably most of you belong to, had a really good year in 2020, and 2021. And they have just been deluged with sales, despite the fact that their inventory is really low. On the next slide, take a look at this situation. You look at the sales, everybody is getting higher than their list price. The days on market are less than a month, and the month's supply of inventory is basically 3 weeks. I will tell you that in the rest of the United States, typically you have a 4 to 6 month supply. Here we're under a month, and it's unfortunate because that is what's driving the prices up to unrealistic highs. On the next slide, you take a look and see that over the last year, single-family home prices, now these are closings, went up 24% on detached and 22 on attached. It does not mean that everyone's home went up that much money, but on the homes that were sold, they did go up, and that's scary. It sort of smells like 2007 whenever all the wheels came off the train. Let's look at the next. This is just symbolic. We just don't know what's going to have to happen to home prices. And frankly, I'm really hoping that the price increases slow down this year. Let's go to the next one. Now, here's my forecast for 21-21. First is the weather here will still remain better than Chicago, even though it's been a little grungy lately. Political normalcy will resume in DC, and it has. Things are just normal again. And much of the government, the federal government that was shut down during the last administration, is starting to come back in terms of, for instance, the State Department and other departments that were decimated during the Trump administration are coming back, and that's good. Interest rates will stay low, real low. Unemployment rate, I think, is probably going to get down to about 4% nationally by the end of this year. And the leisure and hospitality industry will revive by fourth quarter of 2021. Here in San Diego, basically all segments of leisure and hospitality are recovering. It takes a while to get the convention business back, and that really won't move forward until about fourth quarter, when conventions that had pulled out will start coming back. And now, in addition to the convention business, we have the cruise line business. And just today, it announced that Carnival is moving ships back from Long Beach back down to San Diego. And right before COVID hit, we had, in 2019, we had 300,000 passengers. And then, of course, it dropped to zero. And the good news is that the cruise lines are booked solid now with folks who had to cancel previously. And that's really good. I mean, just as an aside, imagine a ship that holds 3,000 people that comes here and has to stock up with food. and booze. And that's really good for the economy. Plus, on average, the average person who takes a cruise out of San Diego spends 2 nights in a hotel either before or after, and adds to our tourism business. So pretty good news. New home construction, I said, will do very well. The only problem has been an absence of ready-to-build lots. They ran out of lots. And now this year, there are a number of major lot producers like HomeFed and Baldwin who will have ready lots and will be building, and the market for those homes will be very good. And we have probably 7 or 8 major master plan communities that are coming online this year that'll produce a large number of homes. And a lot of them will be in the 500 to 700,000 range, which doesn't sound too good if you're from Peoria, but for here is really pretty good. Inventory of resale homes, I think, will start increasing, but modestly, and the sales of homes will be better than last year. Home prices, I'm saying, will actually end the year at a 7 to 8% increase rather than the insane number I saw earlier here. And life will return to normal, and it is now. If you just go down to Little Italy or Gaslamp District, you see there are people on the street. Restaurants are filling up again, and we're not quite back to normal, but we are getting there. Let's talk about the commercial side. Occupancy rates on apartments will remain at 95% plus. I receive a lot of data from major apartment owners in San Diego, and I'm seeing collection rates in excess of 95% on their whole inventory. So the scare that everyone was saying is going to take place because of people withholding their rents and moving out did not happen, really. It's been really good news for apartments. The rents, however, are only going to go up very, very modestly next year, and some places maybe not at all. The inventory of available projects will remain low, except for downtown, which has about 2,500 units coming online in the next 12 months. And most of them are in East Village. And for instance, you have Bose's new project, which has just opened with 610 units. Holland's Miriam just opened with almost 400 units. That's a lot to swallow, especially when you need to get rents of $3.50 or $4 a square foot. So that it's going to be touch and go there, but they'll fill up eventually. The cap rates, I don't have to tell you, they're at 4. I'm watching projects. I scratch my head and say, how do you do business if you're paying 4 cap or even as low as a 3.5? The answer is, if money's costing you 2%, you can afford a 4 cap. And I don't think Biden will kill 1031s. I think that the political pressure there will keep that away. Things will be back to normal. So that's my apartment outlook. Office, A and B space will do okay. C and D don't do so good. The good news is that life science, biotech will continue to do well. The Carmel Valley, UTC area will continue to do amazingly well. When I see Kilroy builds a building of 160,000 square feet in UTC, and Apple comes in and takes the whole thing, that's really good news for San Diego. And I'm hoping that downtown, which has on the boards about 4 or 5 million square feet between Horton Plaza, IQHQ, Kilroy, Petco, and a couple of others. If they can fill up, by the way, they will produce demand for something on the order of 25,000 new housing units, which would be phenomenal for downtown. And it's just a matter of time. Might be slow, but it's going to happen. Rents in the biotech industry will continue to do well. You know, we're one of 3 markets in the nation that really are leading the biotech life sciences business. So it's Boston, San Francisco, greater area, and here. And it's really sort of remarkable how we've proven to be a magnet, and largely due to UCSD and the scientific research places all around them. Let's look at now retail. This is the fun business. Supermarket anchored centers have just continued to do very, very well. If you've got a Vons or a Ralph, maybe even a Stater Brothers, their center is going to do well. And they have been. And I drive around. It's a little sick, but I ride around looking at shopping centers and looking for vacancy rates. They have the supermarket anchored centers have continued to do well. Strip centers, by and large, have done amazingly well. Most of them are mom and pops. They don't have a lot of overhead, and they have survived. And they figured how to do carry-out business, how DoorDash and the others have allowed them to move forward. Regional centers will continue to suffer. We have a few too many. We had 11. Obviously, Horton Plaza is gone. Downtown Chula Vista Center, Sears is gone, and other parts of that will go. Otay Town Center now, Brookfield is basically not quite tearing it down, but they're going to put up 900 apartments there. And you'll see around the country, around the county, that you'll see major changes in the regional centers as they reinvent themselves. Like North County Fair, those are really large parking lots that could be a lot of apartment units there. And now that Nordstrom's is saying goodbye, they're going to have a lot of space. When we look at Mission Valley East, and you see where Macy's shuts down with a 340,000 square foot building, a lot of activity that will evolve over the next few years with the regional centers. Consumer spending will increase 5 to 7% this year, just because people are back at work, and those that never were out of work have continued to have very high incomes and are most anxious to go out and spend money. The centers with the Walmart and Targets, they're just going to do well. And the other part of the economy, which I follow very closely, is the home improvements, the Home Depots, the Lowe's. If you look at their stocks over the last year, they've done brilliantly through this whole pandemic. The renovation business has been enormous. The do-it-yourself crowd has been out there, and that's really good for the economy. And then, it's very sad. If you walk through La Jolla on Girard and on the other main drags there, it's pretty pathetic. I think they must be close. They're somewhere over 25, maybe 30% of the space is vacant. And it's just a function of pandemic because that business is almost entirely tourism driven. And it hasn't been there. It's very, very unfortunate. And I don't know when that'll come back, by the way. Let's see if I have anything else to talk to you about. Oh, goodness, I can't forget industrial space. The star of the show. Industrial, until a few years ago was sort of, it was sort of there, and it was 80 cents a square foot and mostly old stuff. Well, now it's a new day in town, and the demand is huge. I'm very anxious to see what happens when Amazon opens their 3+ million square foot center down at Otay, because you will have dozens of firms that supply Amazon will be adding space down at the border in order to satisfy Amazon's need. And as you no doubt know, they bought Ryan's 500,000 square foot in Poway. Building was almost complete, and Amazon walked in the door and took 500,000 square feet. And now they're just going to take another couple 100,000 square feet at Corazon and Oceanside. So when you see that, and then you hear Apple announces 5,000 jobs they're bringing here, you have to be positive about this economy. And I think the rest of this year is going to be good. And I think next year will even be better. And I think I'm ready for some questions. Easy ones.
All right. Well, Paris, I'm sure you've gathered a whole list of easy questions for Alan today.
Good.
Yes, we do have quite a list, and I'm sure, Alan, you'll be able to answer some of the tough questions as well. All right. So our first question is about the potential shortage of labor and raw materials, and how would that impact the state of the economy?
The answer is that the shortage of materials is worse than the shortage of labor. And the materials, unfortunately, we buy so many of them from the Far East, and it's not just construction materials. I'm talking like microchips and the like, that it is, so far, it hasn't hurt production, but it's bound to if it keeps up that way. The prices of the materials just can't keep going up, because it's really going to put a lid on our production. Labor, we really do have to open the doors to Mexico again. We're really must have that labor. That has allowed particularly California and Texas and Arizona to function in the years past. And to shut the doors on that is a very dumb move, to say the least. So if we reopen the doors, that will be a major bonus for Southern California.
Thanks, Alan. So can you also speak about how did real estate do with job losses in 2020?
I'm sorry, say that again, Paris.
Yes. How did real estate do with job losses in 2020?
Well, it's really pretty interesting. The real estate in 2020, the only real hurt was in the office market. And you still had, I'm really somewhat amazed that the occupancy rates in offices stayed as high as they have. And I don't know when the other shoe will drop. That's the problem. So far, it's holding up.
Following up on that, I guess, what are some of the key events one should look out for that will affect San Diego's real estate landscape regarding affordability, changes to taxes, and kind of California exodus in the next 2 to 5 years?
Interesting thing. Yes, we always have an excess because there are always folks who are going to move to Texas and Arizona and Nevada or Idaho. But interestingly enough, 60% of the folks who are moving to California have college degrees. So what's happening is we're losing those with low incomes and gaining those with high incomes. So that is very positive for our economy.
Great. Yeah, that's always interesting to see the different migration movements cross-state and international way.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that DC has returned to political normalcy. Could you share your definition of what political normalcy means to you?
Political normalcy? It just means that politicians should get out of the way and let the economy do its work. And I happen to grow up in Washington, D.C., and I watched insanity in D.C., and I get the impression that they don't really care much about anything except getting reelected. And that's really sort of negative, but reality is that is the case. And more so at the national and the state level than local. But even here locally, I think that the elected officials have to take a course or two in basic economics. When I look at our city council in San Diego, there's only one of them that's ever been in the private sector. And nobody's ever met a payroll before. And I think that's very important that they understand how an economy works.
Thank you. Yeah, so coming back to the San Diego, so when residential prices in San Diego, when do you believe residential prices in San Diego will stop increasing 2% monthly? And do you have any projections for future trends to share using affordability ratios?
Okay. I am actually hoping that lenders tighten up and make it more difficult, even though the rates are low. I'd like to see them tighten up the criteria because they're really the only ones that can put a hold on the insanity of pricing. And it's most unfortunate because we have a lot more folks who want to buy than we have homes. And that has just been the result of years of political machinations that have created the housing shortage that we have now. Very obviously, builders want to build. They will build anytime, any place you give them an approved lot. And yet they have over the years worked very diligently to keep the supply of housing down. You sort of almost wonder if the only reason that they are want to keep it down is so their personal home goes up in value. So that once again a bit cynical, but the reality is that we have to get the supply up there on both sale and rental. And I have to tell you that high density is not really the answer because the cost of building higher density housing is basically 2 to 3 times that of lower density housing. So the thought that everybody's going to live next to a trolley stop in a 20-unit building, the numbers don't work. And that isn't what this county needs or wants.
On top of that, what would you think, what kinds of project would work more economically for the builders and for and benefit the community?
Okay, we're missing 2 elements. One is townhomes, which is what will allow us to supply for sale housing in the 400 to 500,000 range. And you can, in this county today, get a nice townhome. It's not going to be in Carmel Valley, but the reality is that they are out there, and there will be a lot more of that kind of housing coming online this year. So townhome is one answer. On the rental side, high rise is not the answer. When I look at downtown and say, well, it costs $4 a square foot to move into a high rise downtown, yeah, and we're talking rents of $3,000-4,000 a month. That's not what we need here. What we need is garden apartments, a typical everyday 3-story garden apartment. And we have a lot of land. You know, the city of San Diego has, I will say, really dozens of properties that they have that are vacant. They could put out on a ground lease to builders to put out moderate priced housing. And I frankly have not heard a word from any of the cities about doing ground leases on city-owned land.
Yes, that's definitely something that requires a lot of private and public partnership.
Indeed.
All right, next question is about whether you see there's going to be a sale of condos coming. And right now, it seems like nothing is really for sale, but luxury apartments.
You're saying?
Will there be any for sale condos coming into the market?
No. It's remember, I do a quarterly report for Chicago Title on condos downtown. And this past year, there's about a 40% increase in the number of sales of resale condos downtown. And but the prices haven't gone up. So it's the demand is definitely there. But however, the average condo downtown is 17 years of age. We haven't broken ground on one since 2007. So we desperately need new condominiums downtown. I can't seem to talk developers into doing that.
Alan,
What do you
on that
think
note, what price point does it need to get to where you're looking at condo conversions from apartments, or are we in such a short supply of apartments that it really doesn't make sense to do a condo conversion? Because, you know, the average apartment building is selling right now somewhere between $250,000 to even $400,000 per unit.
You know, Doug, I love the apartment conversion business. I did 8 of them myself, and it's terrific. There's a very simple formula for conversions. What you pay for the unit as an apartment plus the cost of improvement can be no more than 2/3 of the ultimate sale price as a condo unit. And I can't find any projects that make sense on that basis. You just can't pay $250,000 to $300,000 a unit for a mediocre product and turn it into a condo. And that's why I'm not even sure. Have there been any conversions? I don't think there have been any in the last 10 years, maybe.
Not that
I don't know. But the answer is, if the numbers would work, there would be conversions.
Thank you, Alan. This next question is about the recent announcement of a purchase or a purchase undergoing purchase in a negotiation from Blackstone to buy the 66 residential apartment complexes in San Diego owned by Comrade Previs. As you may know, there have been reported concerns from elected officials and advocates over losing critical affordable housing upon learning this potential purchase. What are your thoughts on that, Alan?
Not terribly positive, actually. I'm not so sure I've given it enough thought on that to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. We can skip this question and then maybe come back to this later if our audience would like to engage you with a private discussion. So we have some questions about 1031 exchange too. Alan, would you mind elaborating on your thoughts as to why you think it will not change?
Oh, I think the political pressure will be there on the Biden administration. I don't think that there's been enough thought given at the DC level, because the ones that will be, not only will it hurt the industry, but it'll have a devastating effect on local governments, because if buildings don't transfer, their property taxes won't go up to the new levels. And the 1031s have been an enormous benefit to local governments to get their tax bases up. So that kind of pressure will be put on Washington, D.C.
I see. And on the flip side, to 1031 exchange, if that survives, the capital gain rates double, does it really matter, or does it kind of negate the benefit one can obtain from 1031?
Yeah, it's probably a question for Mr. Exeter, but nonetheless, I think that there's no question that the tax rates are going to go up. Capital gains will go up, and we'll just go with the flow. I don't see it being devastating. Just another thing that drives up prices and drives up rents.
Yeah, apparently these questions are burning on everyone's mind. The last one would be, what type of residential or commercial brokerage model will excel in the next economy or the upcoming economy outlook?
Okay, first of all, because we have a perpetual shortage of residences, that will continue to be a long-term demand outstripping supply. And whether it's sale housing or rental housing, we're not going to get overbuilt, and that'll keep the market tight indefinitely.
I see. Doug, do you believe we have some time to address the pre-submitted questions?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So Alan, would you speak on your understanding of the recent inflation conversation? What are some of the factors we should analyze when anticipating that impact?
Okay. First of all, I always look at inflation as the rest of the economy, and then there's real estate. And there doesn't seem to be a correlation between those two. In the rest of the economy, the big part of the economy, the inflation will stay relatively low. there's no reason for it to go up a lot higher. And the demand for goods like clothing and the like, the supply is so enormous that there's no reason why there should be an imbalance that would create an inflationary economy. And then there's real estate, and we all know what's happening there, and that's just a matter of an imbalance between supply and demand, and nothing we can do about it.
You don't feel that the printing of all of the additional money getting put into the system is going to cause prices of everything to go up?
Yeah, only if the supply of goods will not match the increase in the amount of money. And when I look at the increase in revenue from lower end, and most of the money will go to households who do not have high incomes. They will spend that money, every bit of it, on basic goods. And I don't see a situation where we have a shortage of basic goods. There's no reason why we can't match, whether it's food or clothing. That will be a sufficient supply to keep the inflation at a very low rate.
See. And on top of that, what is your latest data on affordability index for the San Diego County, Ellen?
There is no affordability in San Diego County. No, the reality is we're always behind the 8 ball, and there's no reason to even begin to believe that it's going to get any better. It's just what it is. And it just didn't happen last year. I mean, this is we've been talking the same story for decades, and it's just a function of our growth, and we're growing more slowly. We're absolutely growing more slowly, but that doesn't mean that the number of households is not increasing faster than the population, because our households are getting smaller, but the number of households is still going up. And that's what counts. Plus, we are also seeing a major increase in in-migration of affluency from the Midwest, Canada. People are coming in and buying their second and third homes, and that continues to cause a shortage of property. I'm sort of amazed. I watch the pricing every month by price range, and homes that are selling for 2 million plus are still moving very, very nicely. There doesn't seem to be a shortage, and it's a result of folks coming in from out of town who just will write a check. I mean, you had Mr. Gates buying a $45 million home on the beach in Del Mar, and that's inflationary.
And that's very interesting insight. We have another live question just rolled in. Says a study by Point Loma University indicates that 47% of the cost of building a home in San Diego is due to government requirements. Do you agree with that? And is there any movement to fix some of this situation, reduce the costs on the builder side?
Okay, that study, by the way, is several years old, and it has many parts to it. And the answer is, I'm not so sure that government is responsible for 47% of the cost increase, but the reality is they're responsible for a big part of it. And it's, let me give you a short scenario. When the city of San Diego contracts to do something, whether it's to build new toilets in Balboa Park or whatever, they add a 37% increase for overhead on everything they contract for. The city is incredibly inflationary, and that's just the way it is. So that's why you see that when the bids come out on items from the city, that you automatically have to add 37% to it, and adds to the cost of business.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you very much, Alan. I know we're on time right now, and we have still a few questions that we didn't get the chance to address, but we're sharing Alan's contact information in this recording, and we'll be sharing the recording link to all of the audience. So please feel free to follow up with your question with Alan afterwards. So this is a wrap of the Q&A session today. Back to you, Doug.
All right. Thank you so much, Paris. A lot of great information, a lot to think about, Alan. It's always such a breath of fresh air, I guess, to listen to you bring the facts and the truth through your research. My big question is, I wonder what side, which gates will be keeping the home in Del Mar. That will be something for a future topic. But on behalf of the CCIM San Diego chapter, we want to thank you. You are always an excellent speaker for our events. More information about Alan, how you can reach him, how you can go out and get a copy of his book. This is definitely worth a read. We'll again wait for the next edition to come, but no need to wait. Certainly get out and get this. I know you can get it on Amazon. Alan, we need you to do an Audible version for those of us who like to listen to books while we're driving, especially when we're out in the field.
Interesting. Thank you for the thought.
Yes. And join us next month for our next Lunch and Learn on June 16th. We're going to have Tim Tokowski, who's a CPA and CCIM. And Tim is going to do a talk on potential tax law changes and impacts on real estate investment. I've seen him talk previously, and really good information, obviously very relevant information, because there's a lot going on in that area, in that arena. And, we'll have another month to get a little bit deeper into what some of the proposed tax laws are going to be and see what kind of ground they capture. For upcoming list of events, visit our CCIMSandiego.com and follow our LinkedIn page. And of course, don't forget about our YouTube page for this and past webinars. And for Paris Mo, CCIM San Diego chapter, I'm Doug Tabor, and we hope you have a successful month, everyone, and we will see you next month. Take care, and thanks again.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.